Well, once again, Penn State's opponent begins with the letter I, but this ain't Idaho, people. This is going to be a tough one with Indiana.
Hey, at least we're getting some football at some point, and let's keep our fingers crossed. Let's do what we're supposed to and make sure we can get all 8 games in, 9 games.
Week 8 of the college football season. Game 1 for Penn State. The Blue White Tailgate is next. Well, it's been a long time coming, but here we are with a Blue White Tailgate show because there's a game, guys. There's a game.
Maybe late October, but we'll take it.
Absolutely. Anytime we can talk about a Big Ten conference game, I'm in, and it's a quality opponent that we get to talk about as well.
Yeah, right out of the gate. That's exactly right. Right out of the gate, you're going to play something. You're not easing your way into the season. It's go time against maybe the best Indiana team I know I've seen in 28 seasons of looking at the Big Ten. We'll find out on Saturday about that. All right, so let's get to our pregame update. Kenny, what do you have for us?
Penn State football is finally back as they head to Bloomington, Indiana to take on the Indiana Hoosiers. Penn State holds an all-time record of 22-1 against the Indiana football program, but don't be surprised if this comes down to the wire, as the last 2 meetings have been one-score games, including a 5-point game for Penn State last time they visited Memorial Stadium. As we head to Lions in the League, it was a good Sunday for the skill position alumni for the Nittany Lions, as Eagles running back Miles Sanders had himself a fantastic game against the Ravens as he went 118 yards on 9 carries, including a 72-yard run. Bears wide receiver Allen Robinson was Chicago's leading receiver with 5 receptions for 53 yards in a Bears win over Carolina, making the Bears now 5-1. Bucs wide receiver Chris Godwin played a part in Tampa's win over Green Bay on Sunday. The former Nittany Lions wide receiver had 5 catches for 48 yards. And a new tradition was born in the Penn State football program as number 0 will go to Jonathan Sutherland. The program put out a statement last week, quote, "The individual wearing 0 represents all of us and drives our culture. He is a tough, dependable, disciplined, and physical leader who inspires teammates with his accountability and production." And throughout this week, everybody on the team seems to be in support that Jonathan Sutherland is the perfect fit for the number 0.
And when it comes to the number 0, you're not enamored with, not Penn State.
No,
this is not Penn State. This is the NCAA.
The NCAA is like, 0. 0 is not a number. What's next? What's next? Pi? I mean, seriously. 3.14, whatever. I mean, just, yeah, give me pi. I want to be that guy. Herschel could have worn that one, and he would have understood it.
Absolutely.
No, but this is another one of those. We need more single digits. It's like, come on, guys.
Jay comes out strong with his opinion on this one. Absolutely. And as far as the battle for number 0 and the role of special teams, so I think we can all get on board with the fact that to honor special teams is a big part of what Coach Franklin wanted to do when he first came on board, and they've really, really paid a lot of attention to it, and it's swung a lot of games for him.
And look, everything you know about Jonathan Sutherland, he's just a class individual and a guy that you would admire. So if there was a number to give out, then he's the guy that gets it.
All right, so back home again in Indiana. Well, Indiana may be home, but Penn State's had success here. But a lot of these games, guys, have been really, really close. But when you go there, and Jay, it's your experience, you would know, it's a sleepy atmosphere to begin with. Now nobody's going to be there.
Well, it can't get any sleepier than that. And again, we were just talking about Belichick, after their first game. They said, what's it like? It's like practice. So, I mean, you got to bring your own noise, bring your own energy, and I think that'll be, we'll see how that goes. 3:30 in the afternoon, at least, it's, I think the excitement of getting back on the field will be enough energy.
But the key is both teams have to do it. The home team doesn't get the boost from running through. Here we go. Okay, great.
And it's important to remember it's a Big Ten conference rule that there's not fans there. This isn't something that's state by state. This is something that the Big Ten conference wants just family there and has limitations on the numbers.
I think that's an important point because, being on the Board of Trustees, we had that discussion.
So, James Franklin, how good is Indiana?
I think this is the best Indiana football team that they've had in my 6 years in the conference. They've done a really good job of building it. They got a bunch of guys back that have played at a high level, and obviously last year had a winning conference record, as well as, obviously enough success to win 8 games and go to a bowl game.
Yeah, that bowl game was against Tennessee. They have a lot of confidence in their quarterback, Michael Penix. Peyton Ramsey is the guy the last 2 years that's had to take over because Penix has gotten hurt, including one of the games against Penn State where he got banged up. So we'll find out more about that. Coming up, I'll look at the offense after this. Welcome back. Let's take a look at the offense. Kirk Schierlinger takes over as the offensive coordinator, the play caller, and all this. Very quickly, let's look at his offense at Minnesota as to what he was able to do, and we'll talk through it as we take a look at what he did at Minnesota statistically, offensively there. Todd, great numbers along the way, and we saw it firsthand last year out in Minneapolis.
Those are not flipped, right? I mean, that rushing yards, 253 guys. Yeah. That is impressive, and only 178 yards passing. I mean, the total yards you look at, obviously you're looking for that 400-yard category, however you get it. But, man, to be able to do that with the schedule they had, 250 yards rushing a game is impressive, and I'm glad to have him here in Happy Valley for sure.
And he did that last year with Tanner Morgan, who was not going to be their starting quarterback in the preseason, then eventually got the job, had a 21-22 against Purdue. Now he's got Sean Clifford. So quickly, Jay, when you look at Tanner Morgan, what did you think of him last year? What do you think of Sean Clifford?
Well, I thought Tanner Morgan was pretty good going into the Penn State game, and then I thought it was really good after the Penn State game.
That's right.
And I think he's got the same kind of he and Sean Clifford, I think, and you look at them, the way they handle themselves, the way they control the game, very similar. Mature, they stay within the framework of the game plan, and I think Kirk is really going to enjoy working with Sean Clifford. He's got some things. Now, obviously, you wish you had spring practice.
Sure.
The lengthy build-in time of the season gave him some time to get, over the X's and O's and stuff. So I think this could be really exciting. And
the efficiency is the word that I look at when I see Tanner Morgan, and hopefully Sean Clifford gets to that point as well, more and more consistent with that, and I think he will under this offense.
Key number to me, Todd, 23 touchdowns, 7 interceptions. You like having that 3-to-1, better than 3-to-1 touchdown to interception ratio, very important. And it helps when you have a quality target. He has several, but the tight end, Pat Freiermuth, is back, and Kenny Schierlinger takes a closer look at number 87.
Well, it's no secret now that 2020 is the year of COVID-19, and for some college football players, that left them a tough decision, to head into the NFL or to stay in school. For tight end Pat Freiermuth, it was a tough decision, but ultimately, it came down to one thing.
When the Big Ten decided to come back, and I knew that right then and there that I was excited to play.
Freiermuth, with his high draft stock, could have made the jump into the NFL, such as his former teammate Micah Parsons. But at the end of the day, he felt that he always wanted to be in the blue and white.
And I had a couple deadlines in my head that I kept telling my parents and the coaches that if there's no decision by this deadline, I'm going to leave. If there's no decision by this time, I'm going to leave. But I just felt like I kept pushing it back just because I wanted to still play for Penn State.
Even though Freiermuth never opted out, he wanted to clear the air and did it in style on the Big Ten Network, an idea that was sparked by head coach James Franklin.
He was like, come on up and just come on the screen when I tell you to, and just kind of just say you're playing and shoot all the noise out of your opting out to rest. So I mean, it was a great idea, and it was an awesome experience.
Freiermuth will be a big part of Penn State's dynamic offensive attack this year, and he is grateful to have the opportunity to produce for the team and community.
I can never repay the stuff that Penn State has given to me, and I think that I need to play another year, just kind of show my gratitude to Penn State and continue to boost my draft stock.
Freiermuth is one touchdown away for breaking the program record for touchdown receptions by a tight end. And Steve, I don't think it's going to take him too long.
It's not going to, Kenny. He had 7. Yeah, he had 7 last year, 15 in his career to this point. And look, the tight end, you coached the position at one point, Jay. Invaluable when you have somebody that has the multiple skill set, because this guy was a tight end when he came in. He didn't have to be converted.
Well, I think the important thing is when you're trying to get young wideouts to develop and get people to stop bumping them, having that tight end on the other side in the middle of the field, and we'll talk about that more in the film room, how important that is, especially this week.
He is complete. I mean, he's just complete. Yeah. He can do it all, and that's why he's so high on NFL draft boards, is because the guy's got size, skill, speed, I mean, hands, everything you want in an elite tight end. He's got it.
Yeah, too quick for a linebacker, too big for a safety. That's a great combination to have, and he can block. All right, so now let's get to the tail of the tape, brought to you by our good friends at CP Vets. Here is the tail of the tape. All right, looking back on last year, and it'll be important for Penn State. Like, do you see that 191 rushing number? Let's see if that number can go up based on what Todd was talking about with the Minnesota numbers.
I'm really fascinated to see what Coach Schierlinger brings to it. And, you know, they talked about the offense being a mesh of what Penn State has done in the past and what he did at Minnesota. So it's not going to look exactly the way that the Nittany Lions have looked in the past years, and it's not going to look exactly what the Golden Gophers were doing with Coach Schierlinger. So, and he's got plenty of talent and weapons at his disposal.
Yeah, we'll talk about this when we get to Micah Parsons a little bit later. But obviously the news about Journey Brown this week. But it happens at a position, Jay, of depth. Yes, Journey Brown's a home run hitter and a big-time running back, but they have other big-time running backs there.
Yeah, there's no question about it. They've recruited to that position very, very well. I think one of the things that they're going to miss in Journey Brown is I think he really gave you some things in terms of pass protection as well as in the pass game, and whether the other guys can do that to the level he did. There's a reason he was a starter. And, you know, there's the next man up, but when one guy's a starter, and obviously I hope most importantly that whatever is ailing him, that he comes through it all right, and you know, that's the most important thing.
Yeah. And Todd, that's a veteran offensive line he's running behind.
Well, a good two-deep offensive line roster will help just about everything, won't it? And that's been something that they've been building and building and building. And Coach Troutwine's in there. I mean, these guys got experience. They got size. Every single one of them's over 300 pounds. They can move the line of scrimmage. They can control the line of scrimmage. That's what they need to do. And no matter who's getting the ball or who's throwing the ball, you've got to have time to do what you need to do as a skills player.
Parker Washington, some people surprised. James Franklin's not.
Quarterbacks trust him, that he knows his assignments and he's going to be where he's supposed to be. And he's been great in contested catch situations because I do think he has elite ball skills. And I'm interested to see his run after the catch ability again because he's built like a running back.
All right, player to watch. Okay. Jay, you get to go first on player to watch.
I'm going to go with the whole offensive line. I think at times they were very good last year. At times they were not quite as good, and I think that's going to be important, as Todd was saying.
I'm going Devin Ford because Noah Cain is the starter. Journey Brown's not there, so Devin Ford's going to need more carries. But I think it's that kind of thunder-lightning combination, right? Noah Cain always falls forward for those extra yards. I think Devin Ford has that home run hitting mentality that he may break one or two.
Pat Freiermuth, reliable in all areas. All right, when you're in trouble, that's a big target to find. We'll come back with the defense after this. All right, welcome back. Time to talk defense. And Todd, let's start out with the missing man formation here as it flies over the radio, over the TV station.
He's not with them. Micah Parsons, it's a shame, but you know what? It was closer than they thought bringing him back. There was actually a real possibility you would see number 11 on the team.
The timing of it, made it challenging. He had been gone for so long and been in California training that made it a little bit more complicated than we were able to work through. So we understand the decision, and just like we were on the front end, supportive of the decision.
I think you guys know how I feel about Micah and the support, and only wishing him the best. And I'm very thankful for what he did. It was awesome seeing him play in the blue and white and what he did for our defense and for this football team and football community. So I got nothing but love for him. I'm going to be pulling for him, each and every Sunday in the league.
So how do you replace a guy with such a strong presence and personality? You don't. It's difficult losing your preseason All-American, but you can hand some responsibility to another guy with a strong presence and personality, Jesse Luketa.
He's an animal right now, man. He's big, he's strong, he's taking ownership of the defense. He's a guy that's played Will and Mike. He has real command for things. He's kind of reminds me of Cabinda a little bit. He could say the wrong thing and all 11 would do it for him. I mean, he's a take charge guy. And the combination of him and Ellis out there right now, we got two guys that have played the position. A lot of great communication going on.
I love the way Coach Pride phrases that. He's like, he could do the wrong thing and all 11 guys would follow, right? That's the definition of good leadership there. But look, you mentioned the running backs losing Journey Brown as far as the depth chart. Same thing at linebacker. Of course, you don't want to not have Micah Parsons in the lineup. Right. But they do have some talented guys, Jay, right behind them that are ready to step up. And something happens with players when they know they can't lean on that guy anymore, right? It's time for them to shine.
I may get accused of heresy here, but at times I thought Lucchetta was the better of the two. Yeah. At times last year, there were times you look at that guy and say, you know, this is a guy that's really got some ability. And as Brent alluded to, played both outside positions, which tells you what kind of mind he has. So I think he's going to be a guy that's really going to have a big impact.
Sometimes forgotten in a game that's a total rout. You sometimes forget certain things that happen. Penn State played Maryland last year, right? So two things happened in that game. Cam Sullivan-Brown, before he got hurt, was having a really good game, but it gets lost because it's a rout. Micah Parsons got tossed out in the first quarter, right? The game's still tight in the first quarter. Lucchetta played the rest of the way. Sometimes that stuff gets lost, that guys can step in and play, and they're better than you think.
Yeah, and no question about it. And the other thing that happened in that game is the Maryland student section left.
Well, yeah.
Penn State student section took over.
Yeah, they took off. The day was over. All right, so let's get to the tail of the tape, brought to you by our good friends at CP Vets. Here's the tail of the tape, Penn State defense, and what can be a very explosive Indiana offense. And there are some of the numbers up on the board. They're hoping Michael Penix is the one that puts some juice into this thing, but Whop Phillier is a guy that puts a lot of juice into it. When he got hurt in last year's game, Jay, I think it changed the tide of the game.
No question. And when you look at last year, Indiana gave up 2 possessions. That punt hits off the guy's leg and they get it. And otherwise, that could have been a whole different game. And Whop, and no offense to any Italians, I'm Italian, I can say Whop. But that kid, they really have a great wide receiver corps.
Yeah, and there's certain moments that deflate you as a team when you're going out there. And that's certainly one of them. Kind of took the wind out of their sails. But we keep saying it, and we'll say it all through the show, it's a quality opponent. I mean, they've got experience back. And whenever you go into a season opener and you don't have scrimmages, you don't have those types of things, so you're looking to have experience at quarterback to make good decisions, experience offensive line, wherever you got to communicate, right? When guys communicate, that's where you want your positions to be strong. Indiana brings 17 starters back to this game. I mean, this is an experienced group.
Last year, Penn State's defense did a terrific job of getting fumbles. They got a lot of fumbles last year, but they feel they need more interceptions. Lamont Wade is looking to make that happen.
Actually been a huge emphasis because when we went back and looked at our dropped interceptions, we led the country in dropped interceptions. And if we catch, I think, like half of those, then now we lead the country in actual interception. So it's been an emphasis, pre-practice, getting out on jug machines, making sure we get our hands on balls.
Yeah, I don't think there's any doubt that's one of the keys for them. The defensive front helps set all this up, Todd, and they play a lot of people up front.
Yeah, anytime you can rush the quarterback to make a decision he doesn't want to make, obviously that's when you get opportunities for interceptions. And I think that's what separates these two teams, to tell you the truth, is the pressure that you can get on the quarterback. Indiana hasn't always been able to do that. And if Penn State can do that, and they've got experience back there, Shaka Toney, I mean, they got Jason Oweh, I mean, they got some guys that can get after the passer, and they're going to need to do that this game.
There's another element from last year's game that people forget as well. Stevie Scott didn't play in the game last year. Right. Now, he's not a 1,000-yard rusher, right? But this guy is a 231-pound running back that they use in the pass game as well.
Well, when you have that guy going north and south, and now all of a sudden you've got to make some adjustments defensively. Now you get more one-on-ones outside, and that's going to be a problem. And again, Penn State's talked about the secondary being a strength. We're going to find out in week 1 how strong they are. And I always say, Lamont talked about dropped interceptions. If they could catch, they'd be playing offense. No offense.
Spoken like an offensive coach.
Exactly right.
Spoken like an offensive coach.
That's how Deion Butler ended up on offense. Hey, he can catch. Bring him over.
Time now for players to watch, and I get to go first. I'll go with Jaquan Brisker. I think he's had an outstanding preseason. Number 1 is a guy to watch. So up next on Players to Watch, Jay, who do you have?
I'm going to go with the secondary, the safeties inside, because they're going to get matched up one-on-one this week, and they're going to have to cover some wideouts. And if you're going to take some chances up front, that's going to be a key matchup. So
we didn't talk about this in the pre-show meeting. I was going to say Jaquan Brisker, so I'll switch. I won't copy. I'll say Joey Porter Jr. because look, Tariq Castro-Fields really started out strong last year before he started to get banged up. So we'll see how much they try to pick on the other corner. A lot of rave reviews about his work so far in practice. I'll say Joey Porter Jr.
Straight ahead speed. I mean, and they have plenty. You have Keaton Ellis, Marquise Wilson, Daquan Hardy's another guy to watch. He's going to play as well.
The theme is secondary.
Porter Senior wants to play. We'll take him too.
And the theme is secondary. That's what we're all checking out.
Yep.
Coming up, we'll take a look at Indiana. Tom Allen's done a brilliant job building them. We'll talk about that after this. Indiana almost always plays Penn State tough. I don't care what the record says. They play them tough. And Tom Allen has done a great job. He's an Indiana guy. He knows the system in Indiana with high schools. This is what he's done so far. And he got Indiana last year to an 8-5 record as we take a look at his file here. He got them to a bowl game last year, the Gator Bowl game they probably should have won. Tennessee rallied late, won in 23-22. He's, in a lot of ways, the kind of guy they needed to get to coach the program because he understands the state.
And a guy similar to Bill Mallory. They had, everybody forgets, they had a lot of success with Bill Mallory. In fact, in '93, they came here, our first year in the Big Ten. They were ranked, we weren't.
Right.
Great shootouts. I mean, there's been some great games over the years, but I think he's a guy that's got them playing at least a consistent level with a chance to. This might be the year he beats a Michigan or a Penn State or Ohio State and gets into that top 3.
Well, building blocks, right? And he's entering year 4 as the head coach. That's usually a year you target and you say, okay, I got a full recruiting class. They're coming in and the system, the guys know the system, the experience is there. And you got to remember, they start out the year with a brutal schedule every single year, right?
Sure.
I mean, Michigan, Ohio State, Penn State. Just start with those 3 every single year. And then Michigan State, when they're up and they're good. And they had a winning record in the conference last year. So this is no slouch of a team. Yeah, they need to knock off one of the big 3, but they're right there. They're on the cusp.
Yeah, I think that game in '93, I think Thomas Lewis had a 99-yard reception for a touchdown.
And the 38-31 was wild.
It was crazy, crazy game. Nick Sheridan is the new offensive coordinator, but they have Michael Penix at quarterback. They've wanted him to be the quarterback. He's gotten hurt over time. He's a left-hander, Jay. So when you look at him, what do you see?
Well, I see a guy that, hits, we're going to talk about this in the film room, a guy hit 68% of his passes last year, not in 2 games, in 6-7 games.
Yeah.
He gives them a little bit more in the run stuff on occasion, and I think, this is a guy with tremendous potential, and I'm excited to see him play, but not excited to see him play.
Greatest
as a homer for Penn State, I'm not excited to see him play.
Greatest ability is availability. He hasn't had that. So the question is durability. They're 5-1 as a starter last year for Penix, and the guy can get the job done. 68% completion percentage, so he completes the short passes that Coach Allen likes. And when you rush him, he's got good wheels. And he put on 15 pounds of muscle, guys, because of the durability issue. He wants to stay healthy. He got stronger. He's 6'3". He's not a small guy. So he presents some issues for sure.
He has some good targets to throw to. Ty Freifogel had 131 yards receiving in last year's game. David Ellis had 85 yards receiving in last year's game. But Whop Philliard didn't play much because he got hurt in the game. And that's a player that James Franklin has tremendous respect for.
I think he's a big reason, why we feel so, and I feel so strongly about Indiana, and what Coach Allen has built there. He's a playmaker. He's a playmaker that everybody in this conference is going to be concerned about when you play Indiana.
May not be Rondale Moore, but he's as close to Rondale Moore as they have on that team because he returns punts, kickoffs, the whole deal. It's going to be a game with 2 quality tight ends as well, Pat Freiermuth, but a guy that Penix will rely on too is Peyton Hendershot.
Well, they're called safety valves, right, at times, where you go to your tight end, you got that 3rd and 4, and, everybody's kind of bunched up. They want to keep the chains moving, and we'll see if Indiana can do that. And Hendershot's one of those guys that just finds little seams in the defense and finds some spots, sits down, big target, hit him, good hands, move the chains. So that's the kind of guy he is.
And we talked about Hendershot on one side. Pat Freiermuth's the other quality tight end in this game. He has great respect for what Indiana brings to the table defensively.
The defense is, it's a really good defense. 4-3. They play us with a nickel guy. I think they're fast. They have good technique, and they play catch technique, and they have some good coverages in the back end. And their D-line is great motor people. So I think they're going to come out and they're going to play hard. There's no question about that. But we just got to execute and go back to our assignments and go back to our technique. And
Essentially, they play nickel the entire time. Marcelino Ball's out for the year, torn ACL. Probably was their, he and Mullen are their two best defensive players. Mullen's really good. Talk about him in a second. But Brian Fitzgerald's going to play that spot. Any difference when you're playing a team, Jay, when it's nickel the entire time?
Well, yeah, because you want to be able to run the football. And last year, you got to look at what they did. They gave up a lot of rushing yards, but again, they were very, with all that speed on the field, they're able to make up for mistakes and make tackles. So it creates matchup problems in terms of the pass game, but it also gives you an advantage in the run game.
Yeah, Micah McFadden's a good linebacker. Javon Swan's a transfer from Stanford up front, give him a little more beef and experience. But Mullen's one of the better corners in this league. So I'm interested to see how often he matches up with Dotson.
He was a quality freshman last year. He really made a splash as far as, with his play. And yeah, I mean, that's going to be big. We talked about on the wide receiver part of it, who's going to step up and help Jahan Dotson, because he's going to have these kinds of assignments. They're going to put Mullen on him to try and get him out of the game and force other wide receivers to step up.
All right, still to come, Mark Wogenrich from SI.com. But up next, we'll take a trip for the first time this season into the film room as we continue with Blue White Tailgate after this.
And linebackers one-on-one, and that's going to be a Penn State talk. Welcome to the film room for 2020, the socially distanced film room. No Todd Sadowski in here with me like past years. So I'll take us by myself, and we'll have to see how it goes this fall. Let's start week one. We're glad to have some football to talk about. Glad to finally see some games being played in the Big Ten. Let's talk about Indiana. Not an easy way to start your year. And let's start with Indiana's offense. Indiana's offense is going to present some real challenges for Penn State, as they did last year. Their wideouts are a matchup problem for anybody. What they want to do is they want to find out early in the game, how do their wideouts do against your corners? So for Penn State, if Indiana comes in and they win the one-on-one matchups on the outside, it's going to force them to then take people out of run support and play coverage behind them. So look for Indiana to go after Penn State's corners early in the game like last year, and if they make those plays, that's going to change some things. So let's take a look at the video, how they did last year. And again, the guys you're looking on this film are two guys that are going to be playing again this year. And if they're going to go after those guys and see if they can make some plays, now Penn State's going to have to adjust, which then opens up the run game for Indiana. One of the things they do in the run game is a lot of RPOs, and their RPOs are, it's a traditional 1 and 2, but also a traditional a non-traditional 1, 2, and 3, where here they're going to read this defensive end for the quarterback. He closes, the quarterback's going to keep it. Now the quarterback goes to his second read right here, and the second read is, does this guy play the quarterback? Then he throws the ball out to his third option. If that guy goes out and plays coverage, now your quarterback's running. And I think they got a little better runner this year than they had last year with Penix being back and healthy. So let's take a look at the video here and see how this unfolds. You'll see, watch that defensive end close. The quarterback keeps it. The guy in the secondary comes in and plays. Now they throw it back out there. And luckily for Penn State, they got a big game, but they got a fumble. And that ended up with an injury to that wideout, which really changed that game last year for Penn State's defense because they have some really good receivers. The next thing they're going to do is they're going to try and get their best receiver on your safeties. So here, they're going to get in the trips, they're going to take two guys down the center. The free safety's got to go with them. Now they're going to leave this safety one-on-one, and they can put their best receiver here, and now they get the matchup they want. They're also going to do some things with max protection, so if you blitz, they can handle your blitz and have time to throw it down the field. So let's take a look at this one on tape, and you'll see that second receiver in the slot there. They pick up the guys coming on the pass protection, they get him one-on-one, and they get a big play. So if they're able to do that for a while, that's going to be a problem for Penn State if they can pick up the pass protection and get isolated on safeties. Now, one of the things they're going to do on defense, let's talk about Indiana's defense. Indiana's defense, they like to have the two safeties high. They're going to come challenge your wide receivers. So if the wide receivers have a hard time beating them one-on-one, now they can really focus in here and stop the run game and take your tight ends out of the pass game, which obviously Penn State wants to get those guys involved, and having the tight ends they do should be able to. Here on this one last year, you're going to see Sean Clifford has his mind made up. He's going over here. They do a great job taking this away. These guys have a hard time getting open, and you'll see what ends up happening on this one. Let's go to the video on this one. Again, he's looking over to his right, looking. Nobody's open, holding the ball, and now the pass rush gets around, creates a fumble. If they're able to do that to Penn State's offensive line and cover in the secondary, could be a long day for Sean Clifford, but I think Penn State will be fine there. The other element of that defense, with the corners taking the wideouts out, now those safeties have to play run and pass. And when you get a good play-action fake, you'll see both the guard and the backside tight end pull, which sucks the linebacker in, gets him here, and they're going to try and play Penn State's tight ends with outside leverage on the backside of trips. Now you're going to see, once that happens, they're able to get the ball down. So let's take a look at that one on the videotape as well. You see right now both those guys come up. Sean Clifford moves to his right, and now that corner, who is several inches shorter than Penn State's tight end, can't make that one. And again, here's a great view of it right there. You see that safety is just completely frozen, and you get the one-on-one matchup that you want. Now, the other thing with this coverage is running backs and tight ends become very, very important in the pass game. You want to get that running back isolated on their outside guys. So take a look at this one here. They're going to run these guys. Take a look at the videotape. You see those receivers go outside. Secondary guys are covering them. They throw it out to the back in the flat or in the flare, and now he's got 12, 13 yards on a throw that I can still make. Last but not least, on third down and longs, they get very, very complex in their scheme. Here they're going to rush three. They're going to bring a linebacker out to keep an eye on Clifford, because Clifford had made some good runs against them, and they're going to spy the quarterback and take away the crossing routes and the short stuff. Let's take a look at this one on the video here. Yep. And you see the linebacker's waiting for Sean. Sean was thinking about running there, and now he's got to throw it down there to the secondary guys. Now, what we're going to do this year is a little bit different. I've got a new book out called Hot Seat, A Year Inside College Football's Pressure Cooker. It's a novel, but it's a lot of real stuff in here from college football experience. It's going to take you inside what it's like to have a season where you've got to win or else. This book now, what we're going to do is every week, send us your questions to Twitter at WHVL. We'll pick one question a week. We'll answer it next week in the film room, and we'll send you a copy of the book as well for you to read. Next week, we got a big one, obviously, against Ohio State. So tune in next week. We'll have a great time here in the socially distanced film room, and we'll talk to you then. And linebackers one-on-one, and that's going to give Penn State some problems with their line.
And we welcome everyone back, and very pleased to be joined by Mark Wogenrich from SI.com, longtime Penn State beat writer. First of all, Mark, great to have you with us. And what is it like to think that there's going to be football on Saturday?
Yeah, I'm still trying to get used to that idea. First of all, thanks for having me. I really appreciate being here. And I appreciate, even though it's October, talking Big Ten football again. I'm fascinated by the idea that we're going to be playing football under extraordinary circumstances, and also by the proposed normality of getting back to football, or at least maybe the hope that it will lead to some normality. It's so strange to hear Coach James Franklin in the same press conference discuss how he thinks this is the best Indiana team he has seen, and then a couple of minutes later say, well, yeah, knock on wood, we don't have anybody who's ineligible because of COVID-19. Those are two just it's still difficult for me to wrap my head around, the giant circle that is. But those two elements, I think, make for a really compelling Saturday coming up.
Mark, it's Jay Paterno. Obviously the traffic's going to be a little bit better if you come up to cover the game. But in terms of what that game day is going to be like for you, again, this is a little bit off football, but just you talk about normality. Talk about how different it's going to be covering a game in the world of 2020 COVID versus what your normal routine would be, because you're a longtime beat guy and a very respected guy. Just kind of give us a feel as to what that's going to be like.
I get to leave later on Saturday. That'll be no. It's that's the thing that among the things I'm most curious about is just how is all that going to feel. Maybe if it were Indiana or another, a 3:30 game, or even just if the original Big Ten schedule had started and had it been Northwestern, maybe it would have been different. But the fact that you're coming out of the gate at home with Ohio State at night in an empty stadium, I don't know exactly how to process all that. And then I'll even just make things, I think, even stranger when you're leaving the Cotton Bowl. I walked out of AT&T Stadium going, that was a fun game, and I saw two really incredible individual performances from Penn State in Micah Parsons and in Journey Brown. And then, somebody walking out would have said to me, okay, well, in 10 months you're going to see your first Penn State football game. It's going to be in front of probably 500 people at Beaver Stadium, and Journey Brown and Micah Parsons will not be playing. I would have said, nah, of course not. That's just ridiculous. Yet here we are. And that to me is still an odd and, in some ways, kind of disappointing prospect. The other element of that is, I pull in and there's a group of tailgaters next to me in the parking lot who are some of the most, genuine, nice, enthusiastic guys that I've met, and they have some of the best tailgates pregame that they look like fun to me. I can't really necessarily participate, but just the vibe, just the whole vibe of the environment, and to know that it's going to be essentially empty, except for maybe some stragglers who want to feel like some element of that, and maybe a police presence that is trying to keep them away. That is, all of that circling in there. It's going to make it, in some ways, I think it might make the football maybe difficult to approach until you get into a few snaps into the game, and then you feel like, okay, now we're actually watching a football game. Also, one of the curious things I think I'm curious about is how P.J. Mullen and his staff at Penn State in the stadium are going to handle that. How are they going to try to create an environment to the levels that maybe the Big Ten will allow, but also just kind of create that for the players as well.
Mark, you're going to have to keep your roster handy because everybody can play without the worry of a red shirt. Is there a position group that you're excited or you're really intrigued to see with Penn State coming into this season?
James Franklin has mentioned a couple of times about the secondary and how he thinks that's probably one of the, this is as good a secondary as he's had starting-wise and, with depth as well. You're going to see that right out of the gate. I think that's going to be vital on Saturday with Michael Penix coming back at quarterback for Indiana. The receivers they have, the tight end, Peyton Hendershot, he's a real solid player. Wap Fowler, who got injured last year in the Penn State-Indiana game and who has come out and said he wants to make this kind of a personal game for him. That right there, I think, is a matchup to watch. And, from Penn State's perspective, Tariq Castro-Fields as a returning starter at corner, Lamont Wade as a really sharp returning starter at safety, and then the other two players who are going to be starting in that secondary, Jaquan Brisker and Joey Porter Jr., have really received a lot of preseason kudos from James Franklin and their teammates. So that, to me, probably is a matchup that I think is even more compelling now in this particular game.
Mark, really appreciate your time very much. Look forward to seeing you soon here down the road.
I hope so. Thanks, Steve. Appreciate it. Thanks, guys.
Mark Wogenrich from SI.com. We'll come back with the good, the bad, and the ugly typecast after this. Blue White Tailgate presented by Blaze Alexander. Great to have you with us. We've heard a lot about the respect for Indiana, which it should be there, but James Franklin freely admits Penn State's not bad either.
I do think we're a talented team. I do think we have a significant amount of depth, more than we did a few years back. We're just in a much different situation from that standpoint.
How good can they be, guys?
Well, there's only 8 games, so we don't have a whole lot of time to find out. You're going to find out this week right off the bat. I think you could win all 8 games. You could lose 4 on the schedule. So it's going to be a question of, it's going to be the little things that separate you from having the great year, and especially in a year when you didn't have spring practice, especially in a year when the games are going to come hard and fast. going to be a real challenge.
I would say there's no harder year to predict 8 weeks out than 2020. Who knows what next week looks like?
I mean, who knows
right?
We're going to get 8 games?
Exactly.
9 games.
So, but you know, you keep hearing 8-1, 7-2. The talent is there. It is absolutely there to win every game that's on their schedule. But there's also a lot of talented teams they'll be facing. There's no non-cons out there. This is all Big Ten schedule stuff all the way through.
Time now for the good, the bad, the ugly. All right, so we're going to typecast this week. We'll start with Captain Angelic.
Woohoo! I'll go with the good. And guys, it's good to be here in general, just talking about football with you guys, doing the Blue White Tailgate again. But it's just good that they figured it out. You know, it's a matter of semantics whether they canceled or postponed the season, but they were figuring it out. They got the daily coronavirus testing going on. All those situations, like the players are modifying behaviors to make this happen. The coaching staff, everyone that's involved with it, they're figuring it out as they go along to try and play football. And this is what the guys come to school for their academics, for their athletics. They want to give it a shot, and we're going to see how far we can get into this thing.
I got the bad, and I'm going to say the political football that's been Big Ten football. I think, unfortunately, without getting into anybody's names, there was a certain guy who lives in Pennsylvania Avenue in D.C. who started to try and take credit for what's happening. The reality is, and I know this from being on the Board of Trustees, the minute the season was postponed, 3 committees were formed with the idea to get this back and happen, whether it was going to be January, November, October, whatever it was, and give credit to the Big Ten where credit is due. They continued to work on this, and this was a product of what they did. Everybody was critical of Kevin Warren when they handled it, the PR part of it, badly. You got to give credit where credit's due, and they did a nice job getting this going.
I have the ugly. 2020. Okay, so let's get to it now. Maybe we can finish up nice, all right? Let's get to the picks. Here we go. Standings from last year. Look at that. Look at that.
I think that was my first win ever. Usually at the bottom.
I'm sorry, because of social distancing, we can't carry you off the field. So let's get to the first one. Kenny, you got Cincinnati SMU.
And guys, I'm really excited to get in on the action here as we start off with number 9 Cincinnati. They head down to the Longhorn State to take on 16th ranked SMU. I'm going with the Mustangs. I think that Shane Buechele, the former Texas Longhorn, could sling the ball all over the field, and I think that's going to be enough as SMU just outscores a tough Cincinnati team.
Thanks, Kenny. I've got NC State and North Carolina. NC State's starting quarterback, who's really ignited them, is out for this game. Yeah. North Carolina, hopefully they put it for them. They're going to play with a little bit of anger after a game that they should have won the other night as poorly as they played. I think North Carolina rolls in this one.
All right, so I've got Iowa State, Oklahoma State. All right, after losing the opener to Louisiana, Brock Purdy and company have come back, played pretty well. Oklahoma State's the team that's home. I don't know if that matters so much anymore this year. What the heck? Let's have some fun. I'll go with Iowa State.
I've got Michigan and Minnesota. And without fans and without Coach Schierlinger, of course they can't win this game. We have Coach Schierlinger now. They have no chance to Minnesota against Michigan. I'm just joking. I do like the Wolverines in this one, though.
All right, Blaze Alexander, keys to the game. Brought to you by our great friends at Blaze Alexander Family Dealerships. Jay, your keys.
I think get started fast, try and put Indiana on their heels early on in an empty stadium.
I think this all comes down to red zone, offense and defense. Can you keep them out of the end zone? I think both teams will be able to move the ball, and I think whoever can be stingy within the 20-yard line and keep them the field goals and out of the end zone will win this game.
Explosive plays, turnovers. When Penn State wins both under James Franklin, they're 23-0. I think in the trenches is going to be important. Hey, guys, thanks so much. And our thanks to Blaze Alexander Family Dealerships for sponsoring the show this season. That's great. We have 1 in the books. Our goal is next week to have 2 in the books. Thanks for joining us.